a local bank account, a credit card account, social media accounts. It's really important to have secure, complex passwords within the environment. Static passwords are inefficient, often unsecure, and also very expensive if they become compromised in any way. The average user has over 40 professional and personal accounts today. Users often use the same passwords for multiple accounts, i.e. if you have multiple credit cards out there, or if you think about the enterprise where you have local admins, root accounts on those servers, it's very easy for organizations to replicate those passwords across the whole enterprise. Whereas if a hacker was, or if a account was become compromised, they typically could move horizontally across the whole enterprise, making it very easily for hackers to steal data if necessary. If you think about complex passwords, right, the more complex they are, the harder they are to remember. People write them down. They're stored under your keyboard. They're on Post-it notes, etc. Right? And lastly, passwords are only changed when required. When we think about passwords, depending on the security policies within the organization, am I changing the password every 30 days, 65 days, or 90 days? Or do I have any policy at all? Are these passwords being changed? These are some of the problems that exist today with passwords. Many organizations are introducing password vaults where they can securely store the passwords, put in some kind of automation around the management of said passwords, put audit controls around the passwords, etc. Hackers are identifying this. They know that if they were to gain access to this vault, they would have access to all the credentials within the organization. And when I say all, we're talking about the admin credentials, your roots, your administrators, service accounts, technically any account that has any kind of privilege on a target machine. Right? So it's very, very important to secure this password vault as tightly as possible. The reality is no system is impenetrable. The fact is, two-factor authentication is one of the ways we can make it harder to protect the actual vault itself. So in that way, we need more than just a password to protect the vault. Right? What we do is we introduce two-factor authentication. Some of the key components of two-factor, right, changes with every use. Every time you go to log in, you either have a new access code or a token. Right? You can write them down, but they're only good for 30 seconds. So there's really no purpose to write these codes down, right? And there's nothing to forget. You have a soft token, hard token. It's very easy just to refresh your token, have a new 6-8-digit code on your desktop, supply the number and log in successfully to the target machine using two-factor. Right? We need to add security without complexity is the key component here. The solutions have to be flexible enough to extend easily. They have to be scalable to grow with the enterprises, right? We have to be able to grow as we introduce new people, new employees to the organization. It's got to be easy to use. If it's not easy, people aren't going to adapt to it and want to use it. And lastly, it's got to be affordable. So what we're doing here is we're introducing One Identity Starling two-factor authentication. Now, this is part of One Identity's cloud offerings. It's really easy for users. There's a number of different technologies that are built into the product. We have push to authenticate, SMS, voice call. We even supply a soft token via mobile app, if you will. And we'll show you some of those scenarios in the demo. It has to be easy for administrators, right? In this example, there's no software to install and to manage. With the Safeguard product, we have just-in-time provisioning as users get onboarded, been allowed or configured for two-factor. They automatically get permissioned with the cloud offering. Right? We allow users to enroll themselves. We do offer a web-based administration interface. So again, it's very intuitive, very easy interface to use. We'll be demoing the Safeguard product here momentarily. With the product, the Starling two-factor authentication is built in to the solution. It comes with 25 free licenses, user licenses for the password vault. And again, we'll show you what that looks like moving forward. So if we can move on, Virginia, to the next, what I'm doing here is I'm going to share out my desktop and show you some of the safeguard functionality. So here we have a thick client, if you will, and what I'm doing is I'm going to log in as myself. You'll notice that it's been set up already for two-factor authentication. So the first thing I did is I applied my AD credential as my primary. It's now loading the secondary authentication source. Where you can see here it's asking me for a token. So on the right-hand corner of my screen, I have a Google app that's running, and this sort of mimics what I would see on my phone as an app, just so I can have presentation and show you exactly what it looks like. So we can go to the tokens page, I can expand the token, and my token is displayed. I can copy my token and then simply paste it into the two-factor authentication app within Safeguard. Hit submit, and we're logged in. As an end user, again, this is administrator type view. I'm going to log in with a different user via the web app, just to show you what the difference is, what it looks like. So here we go. So we have our AD domain. User going to be Frank Evans. And put in his AD credential. You'll notice that this user is logged in. So just to show you the difference between a user that doesn't have two-factor versus one that does, you can see that the user that has the two-factor is a much more secure environment once you're logged in, right? So when we take a look at two-factor, we have a number of different options here with Safeguard. If I was to go and make a passive request as an example, and let's say I want to take a CentOS server and want to check out the root credential. Click root. I have options within Safeguard. I can either check out a password, or I can establish an SSH connection via the Safeguard appliance to the endpoint. Right? That allows me to record the user's activities via the appliance. So as an example, I'm going to select password request. Here I have different options. I have normal access, I have emergency access, or I can request or delay the actual request for the credential for a later time. Emergency access basically bypass any kind of approval process, or if the password's been checked out by another individual, it'll allow me to retrieve the password. And what you're looking at is basically the workflow on how a request is being made for a password. This is all defined via policy within the Safeguard application itself. So what we're going to do here is select the number of hours. So I say just need it for an hour. We have the reason code, and this list is just populated as part of the reporting process to find out exactly why users are checking out passwords. So I can say it's a privileged password management demo as an example. I can put a comment in, say it's a test, and then I can submit the request. You'll notice a couple things right now. There's a pop-up toast on the right bottom screen notifying me that there's a pending request. We can see that the actual request is pending because it requires an approval. If I just move my screen a little bit, you'll see within the thick client, I can see Frank Kevin's pending request, being that I'm an approver. I can either approve or deny the request, or I can take advantage of the Starling application. And what this allows me to do is what we call approval anywhere. Without a VPN connection to the target machine, we use the Starling platform, the SaaS offering, to approve a user's request, or deny for that matter. So on the top right-hand corner, we can see the Google app, the Chrome app. And what we can do is actually view the user's request, who's making the request, the date, what account, what asset or systems being requested, and then I have the option to approve or deny. So if I just bring my screen up a little bit and hit approve, you'll see within a couple of seconds that will go from a pending state to an available state. So we can see now it's available. I can then expand the window and I can show the password. At this point, I can start PuTTY session, log into the target machine using the credential. Now keep in mind, right, we have the status being available. We have time remaining, 58 minutes. I made the request for an hour. So after the hour has expired, Safeguard will automatically check the password back in and reset it to new value as necessary. You'll notice the window just collapsed. This is really a procedure or to protect over-the-shoulder surfing, etc. So we'll expose the password for 20 seconds and then hide it. But typically during the hour request, you can come back and view the password as much as you would like. When the user is done with the password, they can simply check the password back in. All right, and that ends the workflow from a password request. One of the other things we can do is a session. Now that was a simple password request. The next thing is let's make a session. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go to the same request, make a new request, the same CentOS server. This time I'm gonna select root again, but this time I'm gonna select SSH. So the workflow is identical. I'm saying I need it for an hour. My reason code is I'm gonna say it's PSM other, say it's a test again, and then send the request. You'll notice that a session request is immediately available. Right? From a policy within Safeguard, any password request requires an approval, any session requires it's auto-approved. Expand it out, and then I can show, and what Safeguard does for you, it actually provides you a one-time token to authenticate into the Linux host. So here I can say copy, and then what I could do next is just simply start a PuTTY session up and paste that token string into the address and then hit open. And what that's going to do is log in using a token. Now this token is a one-time token, can only be used once. And with the session management side of the house, we're actually traversing via the Safeguard appliance, right? So it's basically a protocol proxy that's capturing all the keystrokes and all the recording via Safeguard. Now, these recordings can be replayed at a later time, either for forensic analysis, root cause, etc. So if I was just to undo some simple commands, ls run top as an example, and then Control C, and we'll simply log out and check this back in when we're done. So this is a Linux server type environment. Right? So back to the desktop, you'll notice on the right-hand side, I have something called favorites. And this is typically used if you are checking out the same password day after day. It shortens the workflow from a request. So for an example, if I want to do let's go back and do this. Let's do new request. Let's pick a Windows host this time to show you what the difference looks like. So this time I'm going to select a member2 server. Again, we had the list of accounts. I could filter down on anything I would like. Again, SG. So here's a MDA account, my domain account. Select it. I only have the one option, RDP. Select RDP. Again, my time frame. Say I need it for an hour, and then do a PSM other, and then send the request. You'll see it's available. Again, auto-approved within the policy. I have two things I can show now. I can show the computer ID, and this is typically going to show the actual IP address of my Safeguard appliance that I'm going to use to proxy the connection. But I can also show this connection string where I can copy and paste it into an RDP session, or I can simply download the RDP file. Right, so if I click download RDP file, you'll see it's loaded down below, and then I can actually select and open it. Here I'm just going to supply a default password, SG, and this has just part of the login process. Enter my security, and you can see that I'm automatically logged in. The advantages of something like Safeguard is we store the passwords to the accounts within a vault, a very, very secure vault, right? It's delivered on a hardened appliance. When I initiate a session, it has a auto login feature. So what it does, it takes the password, it tokenizes that password and releases it to me. That token is only good for one time. It logs me in securely, basically masking the credential. So in essence, I'm not releasing the password to a user where they can log into multiple servers, or they can write it down, send it via email, whatever, right? It's really the responsibility of the individual that has the password. in this example. So it protects not only the user that's using the credential, but it's also protecting the company, right? So we know exactly what a user is doing within the actual environment. When we talk about rights and access, audits, right? Safeguard provides a lot of type of reporting for you, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. So what happens is the user's logged in, they're doing their activity, start up a notepad, etc., whatever they want to do, typically in a target machine. And once they're done, they would simply log off of the target machine. So just like you would do in any other machine. Actually, let me do it this way because that is, minimize this, and we'll go down and log off the proper machine. Sign out, closes, and what we'll do is when we're done with it, we have the option now to check in the session. So that's the typical workflow with Safeguard. What I could also do, we'll see if it's going to work in this environment. If I could log in a second time, let me see if I got the right password. See if it's going to prompt me. Yeah, you'll notice this time when I'm logging in, I'm getting a push authentication. Right, this is another offering of Starling. You'll notice that I have a pop-up toast message. We can also see that I have a login request up on the screen. Just minimize that so you can see it. This is, rather than supplying a token and have to cut and paste or type a token in here, again, it would be an app on your phone as an example. You get notified that Wayne's trying to log in to the Safeguard appliance. Right, here's the request ID. It matches. Do you want to approve or deny the user's request? So I can simply click approve, and within a few seconds, we can see that we're getting authenticated for a second time within Safeguard. So with the starting application, is what I'm trying to show you is that there's options. Whether you want to use a token, you want to use push authentication, SMS, phone call, whatever, you do have the options with this product. So in this interface, this is the thick client for Safeguard. This is typically where we do most of our administration type work. What I really want to show you is some of the reporting around the Safeguard appliance. So we have something called the Activity Center. We have options here as to sort down on a category. So if I want to see all kinds of, well, let's go with session activity. Select session activity. I can say last 24 hours, 7 days, or do a custom filter. So we'll go with 24 hours, but I can also add an individual as an example. So I want to know exactly what the user Frank Kevins did in the last 24 hours. So for this point, populate it, run the report. I can see all the requests that Frank Kevins, if I just sort by time, all the requests that Frank did for sessions. I can select the request. I can look at the workflow. So I can see the time and date that Frank made the request. I can see what time the session was initiated. I can see what time we did a playback or who did the playback, etc. And what you can do is actually launch the actual recording. This may take a few seconds to launch in my lab. And what this allows us to do is actually, number one, see all the activities that the user has done in the actual session, whether it be for training purposes, root cause analysis, etc. So we can go ahead and play this. The second thing this can do, if actually the recording is live, you can take an additional actions where you can terminate the user's connection if necessary. They can actually view all the activity the user is doing, and then if something is deemed unnecessary or malice, whatever, they can take the action to actually kill the session entirely. So again, this is just a quick little replay of the product. You can also take a look at some of the actual commands that were issued while in a session. So above here, I can see that I have 23 events. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see all the events that the commands were actually executed within the actual recording itself. Next, we have entitlement reports. This is typically used for audit type roles. I can be very specific. I can select an asset. They browse the assets. I say, I want to know who has access to a server 126 Sybase. Select it, run the report. At this point, it tells me 8 people can access the accounts on the asset. If I was to click it, it'll show me all the actual users that have access to the actual target machine. If I double click the user, to make this a little wider for you guys, we can see the accounts that they have access to. We can see the entitlement. This is the entitlement name, that how they're getting the access. We can see the policy. Request policy is the workflow, right? Whether it requires an approval, the length of time that they're allowed to check out the password, etc. So you can see some for PPM, privileged password management, office hours, auto approved. We have the type of access, whether it's a password request or an SSH connection. Do we include the password of the request? Do we change the passwords? So one of the things we didn't talk about is some of the things that Safeguard can do in-house is rotate the password on a scheduled basis. So let's assume a user checks out a password for an hour, utilizes it, checks it back in. We can reset the password, right? That's sort of last use type scenario. We can also schedule changes, i.e. every 20 days, 30 days, 60 days, whatever the schedule is that meets your criteria, we can fully automate that with the Safeguard solution. Safeguard is clientless. We aren't pushing clients out to the desktops whatsoever. We're using data protocols to do such. If I look at some of the settings, when I took a look at the accounts as an example, these are all the accounts that are being managed within my environment. If I wanted to go and change, a local admin account on a Windows desktop, or maybe a local account on a member server, I could highlight it. I can go to change password under the network settings, say change passwords, and that'll start the taskbar up, which I'll bring into view. We can see the process going out and resetting the password. Again, at this point, it's just an unknown value, right? When I double click this and take a look at some of the policies, we can see the actual profile. So I'm using what we call a Windows standard profile, and I'm changing the password daily. So on a scheduled basis, every day this application, Safeguard, is changing that password. Now, some of the additional features, do I want to enable a user for password requests or a session requests? When I took a look at entitlements, and this is where some of the key components of the product comes in, right? So here's my Safeguard users. These are the people that are entitled to check out the passwords. We can list them. It just comes from a group via Active Directory. We can fully integrate with Active Directory. But when I take a look at access requests, this is some of the workflows that a user may go through to request either a password or a session. So if I take a look at this second one, priority 2, PPM, privileged password management, office hours, auto approved. Select it. General, we just give it a name, give it a priority, and we say what type of access is it? Is this a password request? Is it a RDP session request or SSH? So in this example, password request. Scope, these are all the accounts that are in the scope for this policy. Right, we can add or delete the accounts as necessary. Requester, so these are some of the reason codes we can supply as part of the workflow. Is it required? Again, this is the reason required. Do we require a comment? We can make it mandatory or optional. Does it require a ticketing system? We can integrate with ServiceNow, Remedy as an example. Right, the default duration. What's the minimum amount of time that I'm allowed a user to check out? And then do I allow the user to extend that time? Right, so I can go up to 7 days as an example. Do I require any approvers? So here's where the approver anywhere comes into play. Right, so I can select what users should I require an approval. These are the users that will be identified and notified via their apps on their telephone for approval. In this example is just auto-approved. Once it's released, it'll be granted. Do I require any reviewers? This is sort of after the fact, right? Your audit type role. Once everything's been said and done, the auditor goes and closes out the workflow. Make sure that the user had valid reason and closes the workflow. Access, do I want to change the password after check-in? This is our last use scenario, right? Checked out, check back in, we'll reset the password. Session request is not on scope, being this is a password request. And then time restrictions. All right, so Monday through Friday, I have from 8 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is the workflow that the user will follow. Outside of those hours, right, it'll require any kind of approval, as an example. So then lastly, we have emergency access. So I'm just going to cancel out of this, and very quickly, since we're running out of time here, 3 minutes. This is the after hours, and really the big change is, right, we require approvals. So these are the users that can approve the user's request. Time restrictions are reversed. So 7 days a week, after hours, requires an approval. And then I also have the option for emergency access enabled. So anything after hours, if there is a break glass scenario, the user can go out and retrieve the password as necessary via this control. So that's a very high level of our safeguard integration. A little deeper with the safeguard application on the process of checking out passwords, checking out sessions, and how some of the automation is done behind the scenes. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks everyone for attending today, and if you haven't already done so, be sure to check out the previous and our upcoming Get IAM Right Insight Series webinars. You can find them at oneidentity.com/Get IAM Right Webcast. It's Get IAM Right Webcast. Thanks.